everybody, I'm Jamie Trull. I am a CPA. I'm also a financial literacy coach and profit strategist. And typically I'm helping business owners understand their finances better and be able to manage their cash to be able to make and keep more money. But lately, I've kind of pivoted and we're really working on understanding the stimulus. So I've been reading all the things for you guys, keeping up with all of it so that I can help you understand the things that are changing, the things that are being clarified. If you got this PPP loan, right, a lot of you guys got it and you were excited to get it. And now you're like, wait, what do I have to do to make sure that this thing gets forgiven? So that's really what I have been working on and want to bring to you today. So last night, some additional clarifications came out in the form of a new interim final rule on May 22nd. So it came out last night, which was Friday night. Remember the Friday before that, May 15th, the new forgiveness application for PPP came out from the Treasury. So I guess that's the new trend, is they're going to put guidance out on Friday night and then leave for the weekend. Which really makes for a fun weekend for accountants. So I wanted to make sure to get this video out to you guys so that you could see it and understand exactly the important things that are coming out of this. So I'm going to really run through this and go through the things that are most important in this new interim final rule for you to understand. Also, if you've not watched my video on the walkthrough of the application for PPP, please go and do that. Go ahead and subscribe to my channel and then go and look through the videos. I've got tons of them. I've got videos on unemployment. I've got videos on the EIDL loan. I've got videos, a ton of videos on PPP. So if any of those apply to you, there's plenty of videos. Go check them out. But in the meantime, let's jump straight into what the new rules are, or the new clarifications anyway, that came out last night. Okay, so importantly, anytime that you are going to try to look up any of the official guidance from the Treasury, the best place to go is treasury.gov. So I'm going to show you exactly where I'm going to get there. Okay? So you can see this red bar here for small businesses seeking direct relief. Click that and then scroll down and you're going to see under tools all these different things. And you'll notice under program rules, there are about 1 million different interim final rules. Okay. So the one that we're looking for, and you can usually tell they usually put the dates next to them. So we're going to jump over here to interim final rule on loan forgiveness. That one sounds good, right? So we're going to jump on in here. Okay, so this thing is 26 pages. I'm not going to go through all of it. Nobody wants me to read all of that to you, but I'm just going to bring out the things that are most important, okay? So we're going to scroll on down and we're going to start with page 7. Okay, this is where it starts to get good. Now go ahead and take a look at all of this and read through it. It's really fun bedtime reading. It'll help you sleep really well. But here, let's get into question number 2, because I think this is a question we have been talking about. So one of the questions is, what is the general process to obtain loan forgiveness? Okay, so to receive loan forgiveness, a borrower must complete and submit the loan forgiveness application to its lender. Obviously, right? We know we got the application. You're going to have to submit that to the lender. In general, that's going to be after your 8 weeks. So I know a lot of you guys are ready to jump the gun and you really want to get it forgiven. But the truth of the matter is you're going to have to wait until there's a process up and running from the banks, and they just don't have that yet. So once that happens, your lender will probably let you know, hey, we're open for applications. But then it says, as a general matter, the lender will review the application and make a decision. So it's going to be up to your bank, not the SBA in most cases. Now, if your loan was over $2 million, good for you. And your loan will probably have to also be reviewed by the SBA in that case. But in general, most people's loans are just going to be reviewed by your bank that you applied through, or perhaps a partnering bank that they're working with, depending on that bank. So, you can see here it says the lender has 60 days from receipt of a complete application to issue a decision. So again, it's kind of like that rush, and wait. That's sort of what we're dealing with in all of these programs, this rush to get everything in and then wait, because it's going to take a while for the banks to get through this. So know that as soon as you get that application in, it's going to take some time for the bank to actually go through it. Now, some may come up with a process to do this faster than others, but it's just going to depend. So don't expect that that's going to be overnight. So this just kind of goes into what happens if the lender determines that the borrower is entitled and you're going to get forgiveness, and the SBA is going to essentially come back and they're going to give the bank back that money, right? They're going to reimburse the banks. So they'll either decide you're 100% forgiven or they'll decide you're partially forgiven. Either way, you'll figure that out, and then you can settle up then, or the rest can become a loan over 2 years at 1% interest if any of it is not forgiven. Okay, so let's go check out The next page, just real quickly, because this has been a point of surprise, I think, for some people. A lot of people applied for both EIDL and PPP, and then they were surprised when things came out saying, hey, by the way, if you did both, your EIDL advance, the grant, not the loan. If you got the loan, that's separate. But if you got a grant, like that free money from the EIDL, the $1,000 per employee, if you got that, it's going to be subtracted off of your PPP forgiveness if you got PPP. Okay, so at the end, if there was a portion of PPP you would have been forgiven, figure out the amount of PPP you're going to be forgiven, then subtract that EIDL advance from it. So you can see here it specifically calls that out. Okay, so now we're going to jump into one part that I thought was probably the most interesting of all, and maybe the most impactful in a good way for you. If you've been somebody struggling with, I don't know how I'm going to hit that 75% threshold for PPP, for payroll, I don't know how I'm going to make sure that I get enough payroll in to get this thing forgiven. Let me show you something that's going to make you excited. Okay, so go to question 3. Payroll costs eligible for loan forgiveness. When must payroll costs be incurred and or paid to be eligible for forgiveness? So the assumption to this point, it's been a little bit fuzzy in the guidance that's been shown by Treasury to now, but the thought was you were going to have to both incur and pay those expenses in the 8 weeks for them to count, meaning no back pay, no prepayments, and it really has to be just that 8 weeks worth of payroll that was incurred during that time that would count. Okay, let me show you something though. So this one kind of made me smile a little bit to read through. In general, payroll costs paid or, do you see that? Or incurred during the 8 consecutive week covered period are eligible for forgiveness. Borrowers may seek forgiveness for payroll costs for the 8 weeks beginning on either, and this is where the new application that came out last week did give kind of an option to do an alternative payroll cycle. So you can either start, your payroll 8-week count from the day you got the money, or you can start that count from the first day of your next pay period, because sometimes that's a little bit easier, right? And I'll walk through an example of what that kind of means. But ultimately, you have a choice there of which one you want to use. Only for payroll. You can't choose that for the others. For non-payroll costs, it starts right the day you get the money. That's your covered period. But for payroll, you get a little bit of a choice. But the big thing here, guys, is or. Paid or incurred. What does that mean? Well, let's say, I think a lot of people have been worried, okay, well, I've got a payroll run. The payroll run paid during the 8 weeks. Okay, so let's say, let's do an example. Let's say that you normally pay, your normal payroll runs for May would be May 1st through the 14th, right? That's a pay period. And then that pay is done kind of a week in arrears, which is typical, right? Is the pay for May 1st through 14th comes through on the 21st. And then May 15th through the 28th is paid, say, June 4th, okay? So in those cases, people were wondering, okay, what happens if my loan is funded May 17th, right? So again, we had a pay period from the 1st to the 14th, which gets paid on the 21st. The 21st is after you got the loan, right? You got the loan, but it was paid for a pay period from before the loan. So the question was, does that count or not? I paid it during the pay period, but it wasn't really related to the pay period. Or sometimes maybe it was partially related to the pay period to make things even more complicated, right? And the answer, according to this now, is paid or incurred, which means as long as you paid it during that time frame, that should count. If it was payroll you paid during the 8 weeks, that would count towards your forgiveness, even if it's payroll for a previous period, okay? That is huge. That is big, because that opens up, a lot of people are trying to figure out how to get, all of this in there. And the truth is now you could get an extra pay period in really pretty easily. Without having to do a whole bunch of finagling to do it, you could have an extra pay period that would fall in. So you'll need to kind of map it out. I suggest getting out like an actual calendar and circling your dates and counting out your 8 weeks, your 56 days that you have that PPP, and looking at those two options of either start payroll period the day you got it, or start the payroll period on the first day of your next payroll period. So let's say, again, my payroll period is May 1st through the 14th, paid on the 21st, right? Or May 15th through the 28th, paid on June 4th. Well, if I get the loan on May 17th, and that's in the middle of a pay period, I could technically go, you know what, I'm going to wait till the 29th, right? The first day of that next pay period to actually use this, right, to start my 8-week period. So I would actually literally print a calendar, circle all your days. Here's the days that this would be due. Here's the time period, right? And figure out what makes the most sense for when to start this loan. When can you compact the most amount of money into it to make sure you can maximize forgiveness, okay? There is some strategy here. Additionally, something that they came out with was, I think it's on the next page here, if payroll costs are incurred during this 8-week alternative period, covered period, and paid after the end of the alternative payroll covered period, such payroll costs will be eligible for forgiveness if they are paid no later than the first regular payroll date thereafter. Okay, so what this is essentially saying is that if you incurred, okay, if you actually incurred those expenses, but you hadn't paid it yet, right? Because a lot of times payment is in arrears. So the payroll period might have fallen during the 8 weeks, but you hadn't yet paid that payroll. That can count, okay? So you can actually add that in, just the portion that falls between the 8 weeks, but you could add that in. I still think it could be helpful to run a payroll run on the last day of your 8 weeks. And the reason that I say that is because if you don't, you're probably going to be stuck with the next payroll run after is probably going to be partially forgiven and partially not. And that's going to be a little bit difficult to figure out. So I would run a payroll run either on the last day that trues you all the way up, or even the next week, but that goes through just the last day that you had that 8 weeks, okay? So I think that's going to be the strategy that's going to work the best, rather than having to figure out what portion of the next payroll run after the 8 weeks was up was related to the 8 weeks and what portion wasn't. If you can cleanly kind of maybe do a bonus payroll run to make sure there's a clean cutoff, I think that would be helpful, but it's not something that's required. But that gives a lot of flexibility. So that means you can either pay it or incur it during that time frame, and it's gonna count, you guys. That is really big. And I think that this is the Treasury's way of trying to give a little bit of flexibility around these rules and meeting them, because there has been some pushback on the 8 weeks. There's been some pushback on the 75% payroll rule. There are some things in Congress, depending on when you're watching this. Make sure I'll update below if anything has been passed by Congress, because that is something that they're looking at, is extending the time period and changing the 75% threshold for payroll. So if that changes, obviously, some of this will change, but I think this is Treasury's way of giving a little bit of more flexibility here without having to do legislation to do it. So I think that's a really good situation that if you're strategic, you can figure this out. Now, I'm working on a payroll tracker as well, a PPP tracker, should I say. And it is going to basically complete your entire application for you. You're going to fill out things. It's got really good instructions around what you need to fill out. And it will help you work through a lot of these calculations. So go grab that. balancecfo.com/PPP tracker is where you're going to find that. And that is going to be super helpful for you when you are doing this work. Okay, so let's see what else we've got in here that's interesting to point out. Okay, so you can see here on this page, now it says our salary, wages, or commission payments to furloughed employees, bonuses, or hazard pay during the covered period eligible for loan forgiveness. We'd always been assuming that the answer was yes, and they have confirmed here that yes, indeed, that counts as payroll. So again, if you are in that spot where you're like, I don't know how I'm going to meet these 75% rule, you can pay, a lot of people are paying hazard pay to their employees, maybe bonuses during that time period, all of that counts. Now, I'll get to it in a minute, but there are some rules around owner pay though. So this is for your employees, you can do this, but not necessarily for yourself, okay? Okay, so here it is. Are there caps on the amount of loan forgiveness available for owner employees and self-employed individuals' own payroll compensation? Yes. Essentially what all of this is going to say is, yes, the amount of loan forgiveness requested for owner employees and self-employed individuals can be no more than the lesser of 8/52 of 2019 compensation. 8/52, that's take your 2019 compensation, divide by 52, multiply by 8. For if you're a sole proprietor or an LLC, that's going to be your Schedule C net profit, line 31, divided by 52, multiplied by 8. If you are a S Corp, or C Corp, that's going to be your W-2 wages from 2019 divided by 52, 52 multiplied by 8. That is your limit for wages, okay? And then there's a little bit, it does talk down here also about how it works for general partners. They're also capped at 2019. That's calculated a little bit differently. But basically this will tell you exactly how much you can pay yourself. And you are going to be capped. You can't basically have a windfall. That's what they're trying to avoid, right? Is you to be able to just get forgiveness by paying yourself more money. They want this money to go back into employees' pockets, not necessarily for owners, okay? So don't get caught up in that. Okay, so this also gave guidance on non-payroll. So remember, there's only a couple of types of expenses that non-payroll costs that we can use that on. It can be rent, utilities, business mortgage interest. That's really it. I mean, those are really the main things that you can use this on that are non-payroll in nature and get forgiven. So let's look at what it says about that. So for non-payroll, a non-payroll cost is eligible for forgiveness if it was paid during the covered period, or y'all love the or, right? Let's pick up on the or here. Or incurred during the covered period and paid on or before the next regular billing date, even if the billing date is after the covered period. Think about utilities here. That's a really good example of this, right? Where utilities are usually billed in arrears. So if that's the case and you pay a utility bill, maybe you got the loan May 5th and May 15th you paid a utility bill, but that utility bill related to April, the question was, can you include that? Because April wasn't part of your covered period. Yes. Paid or incurred, okay? Doesn't have to be incurred during that time. It's fine to back pay some of those bills if you still have them, if you haven't paid them yet, okay? So that's really important. And then as far as incurred, you can also then, let's say your May, right? You're gonna pay your May one in June, and you're gonna pay your June one in July. Well, by the time you pay that June one, it's probably after your covered period. But as long as it was incurred during that time frame, similar to payroll, you would get to count it, all right? So only the time period, you might have to do a little bit of calculation on your utility bill at that last, for that last utility bill to come up with the amount you can include, but you can add that in, all right? So you might be able to get easily 3 payments in. Theoretically, the question here is, can you prepay, right? What are the rules then around prepay? Can you prepay rent? Can you prepay utilities, right? There is nothing in here that says you can't. The only thing that this actually goes into and says that you cannot prepay, take a look here, you can see it, are advance payments of interest on mortgage obligations. That's the only thing it tells you can't prepay, your business mortgage interest, right? So, but it doesn't say anything about rent and utilities. So to me that says, yeah, you probably can prepay those things if that is something that you can do, that you can work out with your landlord or that you can work out with your utility company if you need more cost to be incurred during the 8 weeks, okay? So that is a great thing as well. And then the next several sections here go into the reduction to loan forgiveness amount. Okay, so what does that mean? There are a lot of rules, and this is probably the most complicated part about applying for PPP forgiveness, are going to be the rules around the FTE calculation, your full-time equivalent, and the rules around your salary and wages reduction. There's like essentially a calculation of how much you might have to reduce if you don't hire people back at the same wages as before, i.e. the same salary or the same hourly rate, like $12 per hour before, then hire them at least at $12 an hour, or at least don't decrease it by more than 25%. So there's a lot of calculation that is involved in that. That is one, you're gonna want this spreadsheet, you guys. I promise you it's gonna make your life easier. balancecfo.com/PPP tracker. We are currently working on putting through the changes related to this. So go ahead and get on the list to sign up. It will be coming out in the next couple of days, depending on when you're watching this video. It may already be out there. So make sure you sign up and get that tracker, because it's going to simplify all of that. And I'm not going to read through all these pages because literally the next 10 pages or so are all of those specific rules, but I do encourage you to go read it and get a feel for it, and then get the tracker and, take a sigh of relief, because it's going to really help you figure all of that out. Okay, so that's really the update that I wanted to be able to give you guys today. I thought it was really important to come here and make sure that you are aware of some of these important changes going on. Make sure that you're following me, subscribe to this channel, join my group It's up on the screen right now, balancedcfo.com/group. It's called Financial Literacy for Women Business Owners. It's a free Facebook group. I'm answering everybody's questions on all things stimulus right now. It's a stimulus party in there, so make sure. That doesn't sound like the most fun type of party, but make sure you join that because you will be able to get a lot of great content. It's open to men as well, despite the name, and I would love to see you over there, and I'll see you guys on my next video. Bye-bye.